Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you how to change the brakes and wheel bearings on a 1994 Ford F-350. This has the Dana 60 front end, but I believe it's the same for the Dana 60 and the Dana 50 front end. Just going over some of the parts and tools you'll need. I got a seal puller, a pry bar, a torque wrench, a couple different types of screwdrivers, a normal 1/2-inch ratchet, and then there's this guy, which is the special tool you need to remove some of the nuts on the spindle. It kind of looks like that. That's important to get. A 22mm or 7/8 socket. An impact definitely helps. A couple different types of lights, hammers, C-clamp, some needle nose pliers, and then I've got some brake parts lubricant, some grease. This is the NLGI number 2 grease. That's what they recommend for this. And then just some parts cleaner. Coming over here, these are the bearings. This is the outer one, a little bit smaller than the inner one here, and then in the box is the new seal. And then I've also got some of the rotors and calipers and brake pads and all that stuff. But yeah, let's get into it. Alright, so to kind of start, I'm just going to pop off this hubcap with a pry bar. Comes right off. And then I'm just going to remove these lug nuts with the 22mm. So now this hub comes off with a 9/64 Allen wrench, I believe. So then this just kind of comes off just like this. I try to leave the screws in there. Now before this hub comes out, it's got a ring that goes around on the outside. And if you can just get underneath it with something small like this screwdriver, should come right out. Yep, there it goes. Now mine looks like this, kind of with this double layer. I've never really seen them like that before, but that's kind of what mine looks like. And then now this hub should just pop right out. Kind of just like that. Alright, so before we go any further here, I'm just going to pop out this caliper just to get it out of the way and rest it up on the leaf spring up there, just so it's not in the way when the hub kind of comes free. So to take this off, there's kind of just these sliders up here, one on the top and one on the bottom, and you kind of just punch them out one way or the other. I'm just going to take a screwdriver and just kind of bang on it. That's kind of what those look like right there. And they just kind of slide in and out. So now once you have those two pins out, this should just kind of pop right off. You probably should push the caliper back in if you can before. I might have to. Alright, so there's that out. And then these are just I don't know, some type of rattle clip. Those just pop right out. And then these pads also fall right out. You'll need the inside one to push the pistons back in later as well. So now this is where you're going to need the special tool. You can kind of see the grooves on this nut. There's 4 slots that this goes into, and this outer one is tight, or it should be tight. Then there is a washer behind that, and then there is another one of these nuts that tightens up against the bearing, and that one should not be as tight. I've seen a lot of other guys pull out. There's like a snap ring, and then there's like a bunch of washers. For whatever reason, this truck does not have that. I just have that hub that I pulled out, and then these 2 nuts with the washer in between. That's kind of what this guy looks like here. Then inside is the washer. Which I just grab with the needle nose like this. You can see here it's got a little kind of slot there. Now that next nut should not be that tight. As you can see, I just got it by hand. And it should just be able to come right out like that. This is the next nut here, and this one has a little pin or dowel on it that slides into that one of those holes on that washer that I just took out. So it's important to note that. Now with all that off, this should just slide right off, and your outer bearing is probably going to fall right out. So once you kind of got everything out, I just kind of laid the parts out as they came out. And then this is the outer bearing. Just comes right out like this. And then on the other side, there's a seal, and then the bearing is underneath that, so you got to pull the seal out in order to get that bearing out. Alright, so as you can see, that seal's in there pretty good, but we got her out. And then this bearing should just pop right out. That was in there backwards when I flipped it there, but now that you kind of got it all taken apart, you can take the races out. You probably should. I'm going to leave them in there because I don't really feel like pulling them out. So now that the bearings and seals are off, I'm going to pop the rotor off. You kind of got to hammer these studs out here. So I just take a block of wood and a hammer and just bang them out. If you have a press or something, you can use that too, but I don't got one of them. And these rotors are probably okay. I think they were just done like 20,000 miles ago. It was something like that, but that was before I bought the truck. So I'm just gonna put new rotors on, and that way while I'm in here, I just can be done with it and I don't have to worry about it for a little bit. So before I started welding on this, I put the lug nuts back on so that way I don't hurt the studs. So now once you got the studs banged out, you can just lift this right off and it separates the rotor from the hub. Alright, so now that everything's out, the hub is separate. I'm just going to clean the hub the best I can with a rag and get all the grease out. And then after that, I'll hit it with some brake clean and wipe it down again just to really make sure I get all the stuff out there. Alright, so now this is all nice and clean here. Got all that old grease out. So I'm going to take the new outer bearing the inner bearing, and just pack it full of grease and put it in here. So I don't really think there's a right or wrong way to do this, but just get as much grease in there as you can, and then you can also pack the inside of the hub as well. But this goes in just like this. So this is kind of what it looks like after. Just try to throw a lot of grease in there and just get it all nice and lubed up. And then this is the seal that goes on top over this bearing here. And I'll probably just tap that in with a block of wood and a hammer. And just like that, it's in, and this should just lay nice and flat here. So now I'm going to put the new rotor on, and before I'm just going to put just a little bit of this, just so it doesn't get stuck. It's kind of like anti-seize. Now I'm going to drop the new rotor on this. And grab the studs here and just kind of drop them in. So now before I flip this back over, I'm going to hammer some of these studs in just so they hold, so that when I flip it over it doesn't all just fall out. That'll at least hold them from falling out. I can flip it over. And now to properly seat these, I'm going to take the lug nuts and put them on in reverse so that the flat side is facing down. Now this is where a nice impact comes in handy, because you can suck these up with the impact. So that just set all of them to 35 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to do a cross pattern and tighten them up. So now when I flip this over, you can see they all lay how they're supposed to, except for maybe that one. But now at least when I get it on the truck, I don't have to crank the lug nuts while the tires are on it, so I don't hurt the rims. I'm just going to put a little nice layer of grease here just to help it slide on. So now this should slide right on. Now this is the outer bearing, and similar to the inner one, I'm just gonna slather it full of grease. Now I'm just gonna slide this in this way. Should hold it right up. Alright, so the first piece and putting it back together is this one here. It's got the little pin there. This one goes in first. So when you get to hand tight, that's where you grab this guy and get her on there. Then you take your torque wrench and you set it to 50 foot-pounds. Now while you're tightening it, you want to make sure that you are also spinning the hub. So this is a lot easier with two people, but I'm going to try to do it with one. So that was 50 foot-pounds right there. You can hear the click. It still spins pretty freely. Now what you want to do is you want to loosen this a quarter turn. So I'm going to start down here and go up. So I'm starting it pretty much just flat, parallel to the ground, and I'm going to turn it so it's completely vertical. Kind of like that, which will loosen it a lot. I don't know if I felt confident about when I seated it the first time, so I'm just going to do it again. Retighten it to 50 foot-pounds while spinning it, just because it felt like it got a little too loose there when I backed off that quarter turn. So now I'm going to tighten it again and just kind of go nice and easy with the turns and just kind of keep this spinning while I'm tightening, just so it helps seat the bearing. And there's 50 foot-pounds right there. Now again, I'm going to repeat the process. Start parallel to the ground, and I'm going to go up vertical, 1/4 turn. So just about there, and that felt pretty good. Alright, so I got pretty lucky. You can see the slot in the top of the spindle right there. And then, I don't know if you can see it too well, but there's the pin right below my finger right there. So it's went in right in one of those holes. Now that that's on, I can throw on that next washer there, and that guy gets cranked down to, I looked up online, it was like anywhere from 100 to 160 foot-pounds, people were saying. So I'm going to go 150 and tighten that up. Alright, so now that that is in, you can take this, put that in there, and then turn the torque wrench up to, I'm going to go 150 foot-pounds. Now when you do this, don't believe you have to do the spinning again. I think you can just tighten this because that lock washer is going to hold it in place. And there you go. 150 foot-pounds right there. Still spins freely. Now we can move on to getting the rest of the hub in. Alright, so the camera died when I went to put the hub in, but it was just pretty much straightforward. I just kind of put some new grease around it. Now I'm just going to put in this snap ring thingy here, and this is pretty easy. It just kind of falls into place. And yep, just fell right in. Still spins nice. So all that's left pretty much is just to put on this cap. And then this is pretty straightforward. It just kind of, there's these 3 pins here that stick out, and they just slide into the bigger openings inside that hub. That's all tight. Just double check, make sure the hub still works. And yep, CV axle spinning. And now it's free. So yep, that still works good. Now we can move on to putting the caliper and pads back on. So now I'm going to try to reuse this old caliper here. And I've got to get these pistons to be pushed back in because they're pretty much all the way out because the brake pads were shot. So just gonna rest that there like that. Grab the pad that went to the inside. And this is where you take your C-clamp and you've got to compress those 2 pistons so that you can fit the new pads in. So as you can see, this is pretty much all the way compressed in. Might try to get a little bit more out of it, but you're going to need them all the way in order to get the new pads in. So it's kind of what that looks like there. Big difference. The pistons are well inside the rubber boot here. So hopefully that fits. But before I put the new pistons on, I'm going to grease these up a little bit so they are slidey a little easier. And I'm going to do the same to both the pads. Just put a little lubricant on there, both ends. And also, before I put that in, I'm going to grease where the pins go. Get those nice and good. And then you can also hit where the pins go on the caliper as well. Now you can put the pads into the caliper. The inner one has to go in first. It goes in just like that. Then the outer. And then this goes right back where it was. Something like that. Now you can line up the holes for the pins to go in. I saved them right here. And you can grease these nice and good. I cleaned these too before I did this. And then these just get tapped in with a hammer. Pretty much fit it like that. And then same for the bottom one. And just like that. Caliper and pads are back in. Alright, so now all that's left is to put the tire on. Alright, so those are on. Good enough for now. I'm just going to drop it and torque them all to whatever spec I find out. Alright, so she's back on the ground and it calls for 150 foot-pounds of torque. Alright, and now finally put the hubcap back on. There we go. Alright, so now just to recap, I did wheel bearings, pads, and rotors on both sides. And I did it initially because this side had a really bad wheel bearing wobble. You could hear it, and then when you jacked it up, you could feel it. So that needed to be done before something bad happened. And also the pads were shot. The rotors were probably fine, but while I was in there, I just wanted to get the rotors done. Now it's got new pads on it. Calipers seem to be fine, so I wasn't going to replace those. But yeah, before it gets too dark out, I'm going to pull it out and see if everything still works. brakes seem to work fine. I didn't hear any weird noises, so let's take it for a drive, I guess. Alright, so just got done driving her. Brakes ain't even hot. So the calipers ain't hung up. No noise coming from the wheel bearings. Both sides seem good. A little bit of heat over here, but nothing too crazy. Just breaking them in. But yeah, seems like a job well done. No noise or no clunking from the wheel bearings. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it.